Chapter 12. Page 126. The Best Thing on Earth, by R. L. Cole. John Wanamaker said, I have for the government, and in my own business, made contracts involving millions of dollars. I have signed checks for millions of dollars. But the greatest purchase I ever made in my life was when I was 11 years old. I saved every penny of my hard-earned money and bought a Bible that cost $2.75. That was my best investment, and has had most to do with the rest of the riches of my life. Every other investment I have ever made holds a secondary place to the first and greatest one of them all. Lord Bacon, the literary genius and philosopher, lifted the Bible one day above his head, and said, There, God speaks. God speaks in the first verse saying, In the beginning God. And all through the book we find expressions as, Thus saith the Lord, the word of the Lord came, God said, the Lord commanded, etc. These expressions are used 4,000 times in the Bible, thus indelibly stamping the divine mark. All scripture is given by inspiration of God. Inspiration means breathed into. God breathed his thoughts into the book. The book contains the breath of God. And lives because God lives. Jesus said, Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. The Bible tells us things we get nowhere else. It tells us of the beginning. For only God was in the beginning. It tells of the beginning of creation. The beginning of the human race. The beginning of the human family. The beginning of sin. The beginning of redemption. The beginning of the arts, sciences, music, agriculture. Of nations and languages. Of the Hebrews. Of law, etc. Much of ancient history of the earliest times is borrowed from the Bible. The Bible tells of things that are to occur thousands of years in the future. The destruction of Babylon, Nineveh, Tyre and Jerusalem, was foretold in detail, and has come to pass exactly as was predicted. The first coming of Jesus Christ was foretold. That, he would come to the tribe of Judah. Would be born of a virgin. Would be born in Bethlehem. Would come out of Egypt, and would grow up in Nazareth. Would be despised, and rejected of men. Would work miracles. Would be betrayed by one of his own followers. Would be falsely accused, crucified. That they would gamble for his garment. Would be buried in another man's tomb. Would rise again. That his gospel would be preached to all nations. That to him would be given a name greater than any name. All these prophecies have been fulfilled. The prophecies of the Bible are yet being fulfilled. And will all be fulfilled. In Naomi, we are told that in the day of his preparation, the rivers shall be opened. The palace shall be dissolved, and chariots shall be flaming torches, shall run like the lightning and rage in the street. Notice this prophecy. The bridges shall be opened. The suspension bridge opens our rivers. The palaces shall be dissolved. They have been. Russia and Germany are notable examples. We are living in an era of democracy. The flaming chariots running like the lightning, so much like the automobile. In Isaiah, we are told that with the coming in of the Gentiles to the brightness of his rising they shall fly as doves to their windows. That sounds like the airships. The Bible is a priceless book because it makes promises no other book can make. It promises pardon, salvation, eternal life, soul rest, peace, comfort, strength, and succor, victory over trials and temptations, strength in the dying hour, and heaven for all eternity. The Bible is priceless because it is indestructible. For 2,000 years the critics have hurled against it their anathemas. And it still lives. Time and again it has been gathered up and burned. And its advocates for ages were persecuted and put to death. But it has survived fires and floods. A popular author of fiction boasts 9 million copies of his book published in 8 years. 240 million copies of the Bible have been sold in the same 8 years. Another publisher boasts that his book has been printed in 23 languages. The Bible is published in 770 different languages and dialects. Last, we passed beside a blacksmith store. And heard the anvil ring the vesper chime. Then, looking in, I saw upon the floor old hammers worn, with beating years of time. How many anvils have you had, said I? To wear, and batter all your hammers so? Just one, said he. Then with a twinkling eye. The anvil wears the hammers out, you know. And so thought I, the anvil of God's word. For ages skeptics blows have beat upon. Yet through the noise of falling blows was heard. The anvil was unharmed. The hammers gone. Last we passed beside, etc. Hume gone. Voltaire gone. Tom Paine gone. Bob Ingersoll gone. The present-day enemies in the church, and out of the church, will wear their hammers out. God's word that has for 2,000 years endured the test will endure and stand forever. The individual or nation that believes the book, and lives according to its teaching, will live as long as the book lives, and the individual, or nation that spurns it, will go down. Martin Luther gave the Bible to Germany, and for generations Germany respected and loved the book, and lived. Then, Germany began in her schools to criticize, and spurn the book, and brought on the World War. Germany, by turning away from the book, committed suicide. And so shall it be with any nation. Last, we passed beside a blacksmith store, and heard the anvil ring the vesper chime. Then, looking in, I saw upon the floor old hammers worn, with beating years of time. How many anvils have you had, said I, to wear, and batter all your hammers so? Just one, said he. Then with a twinkling eye, the anvil wears the hammers out, you know. And so thought I, the anvil of God's word. For ages skeptics blows have beat upon. Yet through the noise of falling blows was heard. The anvil was unharmed. The hammers gone. Last we passed beside, etc. Hume gone. Voltaire gone. Tom Paine gone. Bob Ingersoll gone. The present-day enemies in the church, and out of the church, will wear their hammers out. God's word that has for 2,000 years endured the test will endure and stand forever. The individual or nation that believes the book, and lives according to its teaching, will live as long as the book lives, and the individual, or nation that spurns it, will go down. Martin Luther gave the Bible to Germany, and for generations Germany respected and loved the book, and lived. Then, Germany began in her schools to criticize, and spurn the book, and brought on the World War. Germany, by turning away from the book, committed suicide. And so shall it be with any nation. He remembered that the Bible said that whenever you pray, believe that you have it, and you shall. As he knew that all things are possible with the Lord, he determined to pray believing that Marie would soon return to him. Robert was much impressed with the statement that, all the prophecies of the Bible are being fulfilled, and will be fulfilled. He knew that every promise that God had ever made to man, he had kept. This renewed Robert's faith, and again he read Marie's note where it said, "According to your faith, be I unto you." And Robert thought that if faith would bring Marie back to him, she would surely come. He knew that time would never change his love, and that there was no other woman but Marie for him. He would live, work and hope for Marie until he found her. But if she had gone from him forever, and such bad news should come to him, he knew that he would bury all life, and that hope would depart from him, and life would not be worth living. At the end of the article, he read the poem on the Bible, and was much impressed with these lines. Ah no, my dear Bible, revealer of light, thou sword of the Spirit, put error to flight. And still through life's journey, until the last sigh, we'll travel together, my Bible and I. Robert felt that this article had been written especially for him, when he needed it most, making him realize the value of his Bible, and the trust he should put in it, applying its wisdom to his present problem and troubles. By the time Robert had finished reading this article, it was after 1:30 p.m. and he decided that it was hopeless to wait longer for Marie, that something radically wrong had happened, and she had either gone away, or an accident had befallen her. He must make some plans for locating her. Decided to go to a hotel and call Mr. Kenilworth on long-distance phone at Texarkana. With this plan in mind, he made his way to the hotel. Registered, and as soon as he was assigned to his room, put in a long-distance call for Mr. Kenilworth. Mr. Kenilworth was at his residence, and it was only a question of a few minutes until he had him on the phone. Between sobs, he told his sad story to Mr. Kenilworth about Marie's disappearance, and asked his advice. Mr. Kenilworth told him that he thought for some reason Marie may have decided to return to school and complete her education, and probably was at that time on her way back to Sherman. The best plan would be to wait until the next night to see if she returned, although it was possible that she might get back late that night. Mr. Kenilworth told Robert that he would go to see her father, and find out any information he could for him. Robert was to remain at the hotel, and if he got any information, he would telephone him. He advised Robert to notify the railroad authorities, and have them make a search, and inquire at all of the stations where the train stopped that night on the way from Texarkana to St. Louis, in order to get a clue to Marie's disappearance. After talking with Mr. Kenilworth, Robert got in touch over the phone with the railroad officials in St. Louis, and notified them of Marie's disappearance from the train. They promised to send telegrams to all the station agents, to have all the trains watched, and try to secure some information for him. They were to communicate with him just as soon as they had anything definite, one way or the other. Robert now realized that he must go through the greatest ordeal yet, that of waiting hourly for some news of Marie. He knew the hours would pass slowly, and decided to formulate a plan in case Marie did not return to school, or to her home. And if no news came from her the next day, what would be his next move, and what he should do to try to locate her. The next time Robert noticed the time of day, it was after 6 p.m. And he realized that he had had no breakfast, lunch or dinner. But, his heart was heavy, and he felt that he could not eat anything. The shock had been so great, and had come so suddenly that Robert found it hard to adjust himself to it, or to realize what it all meant. Or what it might mean in case Marie should pass out of his life forever. It would mean every hope blasted. Every sweet dream gone. And would leave him with an uncertainty of life. Like a ship without a rudder. He decided to pass the time by reading and seeking consolation in the Bible. Robert had always been a great admirer of the poet S.E. Kaiser. Always read his poems in the daily newspapers, and a few months previous to this time, had bought a little book entitled Poems That Have Helped Me, collected by S.E. Kaiser. He remembered that he had this little book that he liked so much in his suitcase, so he unpacked it to look for the book, and as he did, he came across the present. The surprise that he had for Marie. That he had told her about before, and refused to give to her, or tell her more about it, until they arrived in St. Louis. The present was a wedding ring set with diamonds and a beautiful brooch made of 2 hearts, woven together, and tied with a cluster of diamonds and pearls. This was to be the great surprise for Marie, and he was going to present it to Marie after they were married. As a token of the 2 hearts that now beat as one. Robert looked at this and thought of how the diamonds represented Marie in all of her beauty, and that she was a pearl of great price. It was too much for him. He broke down completely, and wept like a baby. Alone he was, the most alone he had ever been in his life before. Away from friends. Away from mother. And above all, separated from Marie, who meant more than life to him. He sobbed for hours. His heart was breaking. But, with a wondering mind, he realized that he must have strength. And that he must have faith and hope on. Hope and believe that Marie was alive, and he knew that if she were alive, there was hope. He picked up his favorite little book. Poems That Helped Me, and started to read. The first one that caught his eye was Faith, by Tennyson. We have but faith. We cannot know. For knowledge is of things we see. And yet we trust it comes from thee. A beam of darkness. Let it grow. Let knowledge grow from more to more. But more of reverence in us dwell. That mind and soul, according well, may make one music as before. But vaster. We are fools in slight. We mock thee when we do not fear. But help thy foolish ones to bear. Help thy vain worlds to bear thy light. Forgive what seemed my sin in me. What seemed my worth since I began. For merit lies from man to man. And not from man, O Lord, to thee. This cheered Robert, and he resolved to have more faith. Realizing that while he could not see or understand Marie's action, he must have faith and love, and trust her. And trust that time would bring understanding, and solve the problem. He read another poem by Aubrey de Vere. And these words seemed to sink into his heart as he read them. Hate it. Dropped it on the moors. Lost it. And you cannot find it? My own heart I want, not yours. You have bound and must unbound it. Set it free then from your net. We will love, sweet, but not yet. Fling it from you, we are strong. Love is trouble, love is folly. Love, that makes an old heart young. Makes a young heart melancholy. Robert felt that love might be trouble. But that love was the greatest and sweetest thing in the world. And that he would go through any troubles in the world, suffer anything, only to regain Marie and her love. As Robert slowly turned the pages of the little book, his eyes fell upon another poem. Courage by Thos F. Porter. What if the morn no joy to you shall bring? No gleam of sunbeam shine across your way? What if no bird, one joyous note shall sing, into your listening ear through all the day? What if no word of comfort you shall hear? As through the hours long you toil and strive? What if to you no vision bright appear, to keep your hungry heart and soul alive? What if the blessed companionship men crave come not to you through all the day's long length? But, bound and fettered even as a slave, within yourself you have to find your strength. And if, when you have toiled and wrought alone, the sweet reward you sought you do not gain, and find the hope for bread is but stone, in that sad hour for grief, should you complain? Ah no. It matters not if shade or sun, or good or ill, your efforts shall attend. In doing you have but your duty done, as best you knew, and should do to the end. He eagerly devoured the words one by one. Because he was looking for something to give him courage, to go through this terrible ordeal. He thought that this poem would do. It surely had been written for him in this very hour of trouble, and realized with Job he must find his strength within himself, and have courage, hope, and faith. He then read another little poem from the book. Not in Vain. By Emily Dickinson. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. Robert felt that he had tried always to be kind, and considerate and charitable towards others, and knew that he must go on regardless of what happened, and live his life hoping to find Marie. About this time, Robert, tired, hungry, and worn out, fell asleep. The next time that he remembered anything, he awoke on Monday morning, with the sun streaming in through the window of his hotel, and realized that he had fallen asleep. The little book, Poems That Have Helped Me, lay on the bed beside him. Because the sun was coming in the east window, he knew that he must have slept through some part of the night, and it was now morning. His first thought was of Marie, and of any news that might have come. Picking up the little book, the first thing that struck his eye was the poem, Press On, by Park Benjamin. Press on. Surmount the rocky steps. Climb boldly o'er the torrent's arch. He fails alone who feebly creeps. He wins who dares the hero's march. Be thou a hero. Let thy might tramp on eternal snows its way, and through the ebon walls of night hew down a passage unto day. Press on. If once and twice thy feet slip back and stumble, harder try. From him who never dreads to meet danger and death, they're sure to fly. To coward ranks the bullet speeds, while on their breasts who never quail gleams, guardian of chivalric deeds, bright courage like a coat of mail. Press on. If fortune play thee false today, tomorrow she'll be true. Whom now she sinks she now exalts, taking old gifts and granting new. The wisdom of the present hour makes up the follies past and gone. To weakness strength succeeds, and power from frailty springs. Press on, press on. Robert hastily read this poem, and found some consolation in it. He resolved that he would press on, and hastened downstairs to the hotel desk, to inquire if any telegrams had been received for him, or if any long-distance call had come during the night, when he had fallen asleep. But again he met with disappointment. There were no telegrams, and there had been no phone calls. Robert felt very faint and weak, because he was hungry. He had not eaten all day Sunday, and now realized that he must get something to eat, and strengthen himself for the ordeal to follow. He went to the dining room, and ordered a light breakfast. But when the food was served, he found it hard to eat, because he thought of the breakfast the Sunday morning before, that he had intended to have eaten with Marie on the dining car. Everything he saw reminded him of her. Her smile was in the glittering sunshine, which played upon the windows in front of him, or appeared in the clear crystal water in the glass. And the sweet odor from the flowers on the table brought memories of sweet kisses, and soft caresses which haunted him. Finally, Robert managed to eat a little, because he knew he must if he expected to keep up, and have strength to fight on and find Marie. When he had finished his breakfast, he returned to his room, and decided to call the railroad office again, and ascertain if they had any information for him. The general passenger agent was there, and was very courteous over the phone to Robert. He had taken a great interest in the case, and they had received reports from every station along the line, but nowhere had any trace been found of Marie. He assured Robert that the railway company would use every effort to continue the search, and report to him promptly any information that they received. Robert decided to call Mr. Kenilworth on the long-distance phone at his office in Texarkana, and soon got him on the wire. Mr. Kenilworth said that he had gone to see Marie's father, Mr. Stanton, soon after Robert's telephone message Sunday afternoon, and had told Mr. Stanton of Robert's success since he had been with his firm. How hard Robert had studied and planned, and how he had figured out the cotton and grain markets, and the large amount of money that he had made on such a small capital. He confided to Mr. Stanton the secret of how Marie had saved up her money, and how much money Robert had made on the $400 which he had invested for her. Mr. Stanton and his wife were much impressed with the story, and felt that they had been wrong in opposing Marie's love for Robert, and their marriage. They told Mr. Kenilworth that when Marie returned, they would give her their consent to marry Robert then or any time later. They felt that they might be to blame for any harm that would come to Marie, or for the sorrows that Robert was suffering. However, they were hopeful that Marie was either returning home, or was on her way back to Sherman, Texas, to complete her education, and, therefore, were not greatly alarmed, and intended to wait until Monday afternoon, to find out if Marie had gone back to Sherman. Mr. Kenilworth stated that Mr. and Mrs. Stanton wished him to convey their sympathy to Robert. and to tell him that they had great faith in him, and wanted to help make him and Marie happy. This message was great consolation to Robert, because he felt that it was going to solve the problem, that no matter what had prompted Marie's decision to leave the train, and not to go ahead and marry him when she found that her father and mother had changed their attitude, she would be only too glad to return to Robert. They could then be married and continue on to New York, where he could take up his studies and complete the building of his airship as soon as he had made enough money to do so. Mr. Kenilworth told Robert that he would call him on the phone about 8 o'clock that night and let him know if any word had been received from Marie, or if news was received sooner, he would call immediately. But at any rate would call at 8 o'clock. Mr. Kenilworth praised Robert and told him not to lose hope, but take a philosophical view of the matter. He felt sure that no harm had come to Marie, for had there been any accident, it certainly would have been discovered by this time by the railway company. The fact that Marie's baggage had disappeared was convincing evidence to him that in some way, at some station during the night, she had left the train and had probably concealed herself and was waiting to return on another train later. He believed before the day was over they would have some good news in regard to Marie, and advised Robert to get busy and go right ahead with his trading in the market and continue to make money, as he was sure that everything was going to come out all right. After Robert received this telephone message, he was more hopeful. He secured a morning newspaper and found the headlines filled with Lindbergh. Read about the preparations for Captain Lindbergh's return to Washington and New York and the plans for his reception. Of course, Robert had looked forward to being there at that time and have Marie with him as his wife. He had been looking forward to the day when his own dream would be realized and he would build one of the greatest airships of the age. Returning to his room, he fell upon his knees and breathed a prayer. A prayer that only a man whose heart is filled with love for a good woman can pray. He prayed to the universal power that created the universe. The master of land and sea, who rides on the winds and walks upon the water, to whom all power was given over heaven and earth. Prayed for strength and for guidance to do only that which was right, and that the good God of the universe would return Marie to him in safety. Prayed not only for himself, or the strength to come to him, but for Marie, for her happiness, for her safety. It was an unselfish prayer. The kind of a prayer that a mother prays when her child is lost, when she thinks nothing of herself but only of the child that she loves. When Robert arose from the prayer, he felt better. Felt that some of the strength of that unseen guiding hand, which is ever a comfort and in great demand in time of trouble, had come to him. In God and His Word alone he found comfort and consolation. He realized the significance of money and how little it meant. Thought how quickly he had made money on $1,000 in the market, and now how he would give every cent of it for just a message from Marie. Just to know that she was alive. He had never tried to make the money for a selfish purpose. But thought of the things that it could buy to make Marie happy and give her comfort. And what he might be able to do for his country in time of war, when they would need service and inventions, which would protect them against the enemy. After he had time to collect his thoughts, he decided to call his old pal, Walter Kenilworth, in New York on the long-distance telephone, and tell him all that had happened in such a short time. Robert had not informed Walter that he was coming to New York at this time. He intended to telegraph him from St. Louis on Sunday morning, after he and Marie had been married, and, of course, he knew that Walter would be at the train to meet them on their arrival. After some delay he got Walter on the long-distance phone, and told him as quickly as possible all that had happened. Walter was more amused than shocked at the news and said, "Robert, Marie is just a little devil and full of fun. She is only testing your love. There is nothing to worry about. I know her ways better than you do." He was sure that everything would be all right. But Robert felt that too much time had already elapsed for it to be a joke. And that Marie was not waiting around St. Louis or hiding somewhere playing a joke that long. It was too serious a matter for Robert to feel that Marie would punish him in this way so long. Walter begged Robert to come right on to New York, but Robert told him he would never leave St. Louis until he had some definite news, one way or the other, as to what had happened to Marie. After his talk with Walter, Robert felt better because he was his closest friend, and it was always a pleasure to talk with him. He hoped that Walter was right and that Marie would show up soon. At the same time, he feared that something might have gone wrong, but every time this thought occurred he would read Marie's letter again, and this would give him hope and courage, because it plainly said she would come to him, when he needed her most. Of course, he realized that she could not know just how badly he needed her now and felt that he would never need her more than he did at that very moment. When Robert was troubled and blue, it had always been his practice to read, either the Bible or some other good book. He had a scrapbook where he had collected poems. And he took this book out and began to look through it. He noticed a clipping that he had pasted in only a short time before, headed, "Tomorrow's Chance," by his favorite modern poet, S.E. Kaiser. "I may not reach my goal today, nor move one step ahead. No effort that I make may pay, I may lose ground, instead. But I can try no matter what obstructions I shall find, and let no thought of turning from the path I've sought take root within my mind. There may be many reasons why no effort I can make shall send my fancies soaring high, or clear the course I take. Mischances I could not foresee may check me everywhere, but I can be determined bravely, faithfully to keep my purpose fair. It may be that at every turn discouragement shall lurk. My lessons may be hard to learn. Men may condemn my work. My trust may be betrayed by those whom I have thought my friends, but I can close my mind against imagined woes, and strive for worthy ends. No matter how my hopes shall fail, or how I fall behind, I'll not sit down tonight to wail that God has been unkind. But, with a duty to fulfill, and with a proud, defiant glance, I'll prove that still I have the courage and the will, and gird me for tomorrow's chance. This poem seemed to fit his case, and he read it over carefully. He resolved that regardless of discouragement or disappointment, blasted hopes, lost ideals or shattered dreams, he would still have the courage to exert himself for tomorrow's chance. After reading this poem, he began to think about the future and his plans. He knew that he had intended to go into the market again on Monday or Tuesday. But the thought came to him: what good would money do now, without Marie? However, he remembered her letter saying, "According to your faith, be I unto you." Therefore, braced himself and again determined to have faith to go on, watching and waiting for Marie. Robert bought the evening paper and looked over the financial page and noted that cotton had gone down as he had figured it would. The following day was the time that his forecast indicated that it would strike bottom, so he must pull himself together and buy some cotton. Both for his own account and for Marie's. Wheat had also declined, and he felt that it was time to buy wheat for another advance as his cycle indicated an uptrend to run for the next 10 days. Robert looked over the stock page and noticed the heading, Major Motors advances above 200, a new high level. Robert had figured out that Major Motors would not advance much above 200 before it would be a short sale for big profits. He figured out from the cycle of Major Motors that it would hold until along in June and July and that it would decline to a very low level in 1928. So he decided he was going to go short to hold for a long campaign and make a fortune. Robert was still holding his Wright aeroplane stock, which he had bought at 31 on May 21st. The day that Captain Lindbergh completed his successful flight to Paris. He figured that he could make a great fortune by buying Wright aeroplane stock, and holding it for years, and at the same time selling Major Motors short. The markets in wheat, cotton, Major Motors, and Wright aeroplane were all doing just exactly as he had calculated they would. The fact that he was making money on Wright aeroplane stock encouraged him to continue his work on his own plane. Robert did not forget Sweet Marie, or what she meant to him. At the same time, he realized what the study of the Bible had brought him, and felt that through the aid of that book, and the knowledge and wisdom he had gained through its teaching, there would be a way to find Marie if she were alive. He believed she was, and he would hope and wait. But in the meantime, he would try to make some money in order to provide all the luxuries and comforts for her when he found her. Since Marie's father and mother had agreed to withdraw all their opposition to their marriage, he thought that as soon as Marie heard this, she would certainly come to him, or communicate with him. On June 7, Robert sent a telegram to his broker to buy 500 bales of October cotton, and 500 bales of December cotton at the opening on Tuesday morning. He also ordered him to buy 100,000 bushels of July wheat, and gave an order to sell 500 shares of Major Motors when it reached 203. After sending these telegrams, he returned to the hotel feeling somewhat better, and hoping that when he heard from Mr. Kenilworth on the long-distance phone he would have some good news. So he ate his dinner and returned to his room to wait for a message. Later he inquired for telegrams and phone calls, and was informed that none had been received. He settled himself down in the room and concluded to wait for the long-distance call, hoping that it would bring good news. At about 8:15 the telephone rang and Mr. Kenilworth was on the wire. Robert knew from Mr. Kenilworth's voice that he had no good news. Mr. Kenilworth informed him that no word had been received from Marie by her parents, and that they had called up the school in Sherman, Texas, and not a word had been heard from her there. The school informed them that she had left school on Saturday afternoon, and had not been seen since. Of course, Robert knew she had left Sherman to meet him and was now more anxious and worried than ever, and freely expressed his great anxiety to Mr. Kenilworth. Mr. Kenilworth was still hopeful, and tried to cheer and encourage Robert. Advised him to go on to New York and wait him there. He had followed Robert's advice, and bought wheat and cotton on Monday afternoon, and Robert told him that he was going to buy the next morning at the opening. Mr. Kenilworth said that he planned to leave for New York at the end of the week. Robert then decided to stay in St. Louis until he got some definite word, or anyway remain there until Mr. Kenilworth arrived, and then go on to New York with him. He was anxious to see Walter as soon as possible, but wanted to know something about what happened to Marie before leaving for New York. Mr. Kenilworth was confident that the next day would bring some news from Marie, one way or the other, and advised Robert to keep cheerful, that he would inform him just as soon as news came. After Robert had time to think over the matter, he decided to place personal notices in all the newspapers of St. Louis, and the towns along the line between Texarkana and St. Louis. If no news was heard of Marie by Tuesday evening, he would place it in the papers the next day. He then wrote out the notice. Miss Marie Stanton. I found your little note in my pocket on Sunday morning. Have been waiting for you in St. Louis. My faith in you is supreme. It will never change. Months and years cannot change me, no matter what I hear, or do not hear, or what may happen, I will always have faith in you and love you. Will never need you more than now. Nothing else that I can get, or money that I can make matters or means anything to me without you. Come to me, or communicate with me, and explain all, and I will understand, and agree to anything you may desire. Marie, relieve my anxious heart. Let me hear from you. Your father and mother have agreed to withdraw their objections, and consent to our being married. I will have faith and wait in St. Louis until I hear something from you. Robert Gordon, address, Planters Hotel. Robert decided to read and study some before he retired that night. He read the poem, How to Live, by William Cullen Bryant. So live, that when thy summons comes to join the innumerable caravan that moves, to that mysterious realm where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death. Thou go not, like the quarry slave at night, scourged to his dungeon, but sustained and soothed, by an unfaltering trust, approach thy grave. Like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him, and lies down to pleasant dreams. Robert wished that he might be able that night to lie down to pleasant dreams, but he knew that he would lay down with an unfaltering trust in Marie. That he would have the faith in her which would move mountains. That he would never doubt her, no matter how long a time passed, and would prove that his love for her was supreme, and his faith unfaltering. Robert read another poem on perseverance. By Goethe. Perseverance. We must not hope to be mowers, and to gather the ripe gold ears, unless we have first been sowers, and watered the furrows with tears. It is not just as we take it, this mystical world of ours. Life's field will yield as we make it, a harvest of thorns or of flowers. He realized that perhaps all the good things of life do not come to us easily, and that we might have to go through sorrows and trouble to try our faith. Robert decided to persevere and try to be philosophic and hope, no matter what happened, and to continue to watch and wait for good news from Marie. Before he retired that night, Robert read, The Golden Hour, by James W. Foley. I'm sending you one golden hour. From the full jeweled crown of the day, not sorrow or care shall have power to steal this rare jewel away. I'm bidding you join in the dreaming I had in that hour of you, when all of the old dreams, in seeming, were gold like the hour, and came true. So let's dream like a child in its playing. Let's make us a sky and a sea. Let's change the things around us by saying they're things that we wish them to be, and if there is sadness or sorrow, let's dream till we charm it away. Let's learn from the children, and borrow a saying from childhood, let's play. Let's play that the world's full of beauty. Let's play there are roses in bloom. Let's play there is pleasure and duty, and light where we thought there was gloom. Robert knelt and prayed before he went to sleep, always asking for Marie and her protection. He said, Lord, I ask nothing for myself, but beseech the greatest blessings on Marie. And only ask for her happiness. If it be for the best that her happiness be away from me, then I desire to suffer rather than for her to be unhappy. I pray that she may realize my great love and faith in her, my devotion to her, and willingness to make any sacrifice for her that might seem right, no matter what my judgment may be. Robert slept better that night because he was looking forward to Tuesday, the 7th day of the month. He had learned that the 7th was a sacred day, and had often talked to Marie about the number 7, and the number of times it is spoken of in the Bible. How God had blessed the 7th day and made it the Sabbath. How many things had come to pass on the 7th day of the 7th month, or the 7th year referred to in the Bible. In some way he felt that, on this day, news would come from Marie. And he hoped that it would be good. Robert awoke on Tuesday morning feeling much better. Had his breakfast early. Bought the newspaper and read all about the receptions being planned for Colonel Lindbergh. And again the wish stole into his heart, and the hope was revived that in some way Marie might be with him when Lindbergh arrived in New York. Later in the day, He received telegrams at his hotel from his broker, advising of the purchase of October and December cotton, and also the purchase of July wheat. Robert decided to console himself by reading the Bible. He read Job. And realized that he, too, would have patience to wait until his time should come. Nothing could shake his faith in Marie, or shake his faith in the wisdom of Almighty God whom, Robert fully believed, would answer his prayer. He hoped that before the day was over, some news of Marie would surely come. As he was reading the Bible, the bellboy brought him a letter stamped Texarkana, and, of course, Robert hoped it contained some news of Marie. He opened it hastily and read. Texarkana, Texas. June 6, 1927. Mr. Robert Gordon. Planters Hotel. St. Louis, Missouri. Dear Robert, we are deeply grieved over Marie's disappearance, but are hopeful that no harm has come to her. From what Mr. Kenilworth tells us of the letter she wrote you, we believe she is returning to school or home, and we are waiting news of her with hope. While Marie is quite young, and we thought too young to marry. And you too are very young and could well afford to wait a few years. We now realize that if a delay would interfere with your happiness and Marie's, we would gladly consent to an immediate marriage. We regret that we have misjudged you, Robert, and are proud to know more about you from those who have known you intimately. Parents often make mistakes in opposing their children. And frequently, the interference of parents in the marriage of their children, separate too, that God has joined together. Man can only put asunder the physical bodies, but what God doeth is forever. We are very happy to know of your loyalty to Marie. Your faith in God and your great ambitions to succeed, according to the rules laid down in the Bible. Shall be very happy to notify you promptly of any news from Marie, and will kindly ask you to do the same for us. Believe us. Sincerely your friends, William and Mary Stanton. When Robert received and read this letter, he was deeply touched, and felt that a reward must always come to those whose intentions are honest and honorable. So he sat down and answered the letter. St. Louis, Missouri. June 7, 1927. Mr. and Mrs. W. H. Stanton. Texarkana, Texas. Dear friends, I feel like addressing you as friends, because sorrow often makes us all friends. And am enclosing a poem. Trouble brings friends, which I think is very appropriate. Maeterlinck said, men help each other by their joy, not by sorrow. But it is my belief that we are often led to extend help in time of sorrow which we would never think of doing in time of joy or happiness. I quote from John 16:22. And ye now, therefore, have sorrow. But I will see you again, and your hearts shall rejoice, and your joy no man taketh from you. I hope and pray that the day is not far distant when our hearts will rejoice together with the return of Marie. Marie means everything to me, and I honor and respect you as her parents. I believe that you acted as you thought best for Marie's future, and can find no fault with your good and honest intentions, regardless of the suffering it has caused me, or the sorrow and disappointment it may have brought to Marie. I wish to do only that which is honorable and best for all concerned. And if Marie returns, I will agree to submit to your decision, and wait until she has finished her course in college before we are married. I wish to take my part of the responsibility for Marie's elopement, because I urged her into action. I wanted to go to you and talk the matter over, but she felt sure that you would never consent to our marriage, and said the only thing to do was to elope. Marie felt all along when I was a struggling boy without money, that you would never consent to her marrying below her station in life, and this, as much as anything else, made me ambitious to achieve success and prove to you that even though I was born of poor parents and started without anything in life, I could make a great success and accumulate money. To me money means nothing, and I would gladly give every dollar I have ever made just to spend 1 hour with Marie, and I am sure that this is no boyish love affair or trick of the imagination. While it is my first love, it will endure forever. Time will prove that Marie means everything to me. I thank you for your kindness and consideration, and hope and pray that we may soon have good news in regard to Marie. Sincerely yours, Robert Gordon. Poem enclosed with Robert's letter. It's seldom trouble comes alone. I've noticed this, when things go wrong. And trouble comes a-visiting. It always brings a friend along, sometimes it's one you've known before, and then perhaps it's someone new, who stretches out a helping hand, and stops to see what he can do. If never trials come to us. If grief and sorrow passed us by. If every day the sun came out and clouds were never in the sky. We'd still have neighbors, I suppose, each one pursuing selfish ends, but only neighbors they would be, we'd never know them as our friends. Out of the troubles I have had, have come my richest friendships here. Kind hands have helped to bear my care. Kind words have fallen on my ear. And so I say when trouble comes, I know before the storm shall end, that I shall find my bit of care, has also brought to me a friend.